We're learning as Chosrufur Shleima, Filan Chaya Baserach. We're on the Mishnah on Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Look the Mishnah. Be'ezu HaMashiach. Who is the Kohen Gadol? We call him the Par Kohen Mashiach. Who is the Mashiach? HaMashiach b'Shem HaMishcha. Loi HaMarub B'Gadim. It has to be the Kohen Gadol who became Kohen Gadol by being anointed with the Shemen HaMishcha, the special Shemen that Moshe Rabbeinu prepared, but not just Merubim Begadim. Merubim Begadim is a Kohen Gadol without the Mashiach, without the Mashuach Bashem, where he just has the extra Begadim. I think it was by the Bayis Sheni. At one point, when the Yidden went into Galus, they hid the Shemen HaMishcha, and from that point on, the Kohen Gadol was only a Merubah Begadim. He did not bring Par Kohen Mashiach. The only difference between the two Kohanim, those with the Shemen Mishcha and those who didn't, the part which is the Par Kohen Mashiach, we say Par. The pasuk says what is it? I forgot the pasuk. But the pasuk basically says Mikol Mitzvah Hashem Asher Lo Yasena. It says about the Par Kohen Mashiach. So when we say when we're talking about here Kamashuk B'Shem Parabal Kol Mitzvah, it's talking about the Par Kohen Mashiach. So the Kohen Mashuach B'Shem HaMishcha brings the Par Kohen Mashiach. Ve'ein bein Kohen Mishamish l'Kohen Sha'avar. There's no difference in a Kohen that is currently has the status of being the acting Kohen Gadol, the Kohen Sha'avar, a former Kohen, which, as we're going to see, is a Kohen Gadol who, when the Kohen Gadol became sick, or he got a mum, a temporary mum, and you appointed someone in his place, and then the original Kohen Gadol was cured and he returned to his station, so the temporary Kohen becomes a Kohen Sha'avar. So only difference in the status between the two Kohanim, Ela Parya Mekipur Masir Seifa. Difference is that the Kohen Gadol who is currently serving has to bring a par in Yom Kippur for a kapara for the oven of Tumah, and the Asir Seifa, he brings the Asir Seifa, the Chavite Kohen Gadol, every day, which the temporary Kohen Gadol doesn't. Both of them are equal, that they can both do the avodah of Yom Kippur to bring the whole avodah that we learned back in Yuma and where we said the avodah with all the hayzayis and the different tvilas. You can do all the temporary Kohen Gadol can do that. They both are mechuyev to just marry a psula. There's an essay that Kohen Gadol has to marry a psula, vasur mal almana, and they're also asked to marry an almana. The difference between these two things, they're not congruous. You can sometimes have an almana who's a psula. You can have an almana who was mukudeshes, but her husband was not born her, so she's asked for a Kohen Gadol. Both of them can't be metama to a karv if they die. They don't allow the hair to grow as a sign of mourning. They don't rip their clothing. There's going to be limitations on that. Both of them, if they die, the reitzchim that went into Galus are free to go.
So if a Kohen married a almona, he can never become a Kohen Gadol, right?
That's a separate thing. You're talking about what the einish of a Kohen Gadol marrying an almana. So I think he becomes a chalal. So I think he becomes a chalal and is also from the kahuna in general, not just from the kahuna gedola.
No, before he became a Kohen Gadol,
he doesn't become a chalal. If before he became a Kohen Gadol, he married an almana,
right? Which was mutter. So
I don't think
he can never.
I mean, that's an interesting question, but I don't remember seeing that there's a problem with that. His only issue is marrying an almana. I don't think he can remain married to her when he becomes Kohen Gadol. I don't think it passels him from becoming Kohen Gadol. We're very fascinated by this, by the idea that somebody can mess. He has to make. You're thinking like he has to make a decision early in life that he wants to follow. I don't think it's the case. I don't think there's such a restriction. Shemen HaMishcha Asam Moshe b'Midbar Shalgam B'Yasa Ikrim. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said there were certain roots and spices that they would use to create the Shemen HaMishcha. And Moshe used to make the Shemen HaMishcha. So he steeped the oil, the olive oil, in these roots in order to create the Shemen HaMishcha. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Omer Alei Lasach Asa Ikrim Ein Seifek. There's not even enough oil. The entire oil was 12 lug. It's not even enough to smear on top of these roots. They used a huge amount of materials to make the Shemen HaMishcha. What they would do is they would soak the roots in water, umatzaval of shemen, and then they would pour the oil on top of it. It would absorb the rech, the kafka, and then they would wipe off the oil from the roots. So it would take roots that were already soaked, that they already inundated with water, so they couldn't absorb any of the oil. That was the only way to maintain the oil. Amar Rabbi Yehuda disagreed with him. Was it only one nace that happened to Shemen HaMishcha? You're saying it's not possible that they soaked it, but they could have soaked it, and there was a nace that there was enough. The beginning, the oil was 12 lugim. They anointed the entire Mishkan with Caleb and all the Kalim, Aaron and all of his children, Kol Shivas Yemei HaMilum, on all 7 days of Milum. So it was a huge amount of anointing. And it was all made. There was still 12 lugin afterwards. As the Gemara is going to darshan later on. I'm not sure if it means that at this point or not, but Zeh is Gematria 12. So with Irish Zeh, the whole 12 lugin was maintained L'Dairis. Tanya Idach, a similar brayse. Vayikach Moshe Shemen HaMishcha v'yimshach es Mishkan v'schol Shabbai. Moshe Rabbeinu anointed everything in the Mishkan itself and everything in it. There were many nisim that happened with the Shemen HaMishcha in the Midbar. From the beginning to the end. The beginning was only 12 lugim. See how much the pot absorbs, and how much the roots absorb, and how much gets boiled away. It was used for Mashiach for all these things. And after the Chanukas Habayis of the Mishkan, they were still in use for all the dairis to anoint all of the Kehanim Gedolim and the Malachim. Afilu Kohen Gadol ben Kohen Gadol Ton Mashiach. And it was not just the new Kehanim Gedolim, but even the sons of Kehanim, even someone who Yarshin the position of being a Kohen Gadol needed Mashiach, which we'll see. But the Brisa says, although that is not necessary for a king who's the son of a king. When a son yarshins the malchus, he doesn't need Mashiach. But in any case, he still have many Mashiachas that happen. If you're going to ask, now that we mentioned that you only give a Mashiach for a king who's not the son of a king, so why do they do Mashiach on Shlomo Melech? Because Adonijah wanted to he challenged for the kingship, so therefore he needed Mashiach. There's Yoash Atalia. Yoash also needed Mashiach because Atalia challenged him. There's Yoachaz Yoachaz was challenged by Yaakam. He was 2 years older than him, Yaakam. They were brothers, and Yaakam was 2 years older, so he felt he deserved the malchus. So therefore, when Yoachaz became the king, he had to have a Mashiach. And that Shemin is still remained forever. The entire 12 lugin remain. So that's the second brisa that proves the same point. Now, once we mention this brisa, we're going to delve into this topic of which malachim need Mashiach. The sons of a Kohen Gadol need Mashiach. Minalan, where do we see that from? It says that the Kohen HaMashiach, the Kohen that was anointed, Tachtav in his place, Mibanav from his children. You see, he's anointed even though he was the son. So the name of Krav HaKoyin mitachto mibanav Ma'ayad HaMashiach Kamash one mibanav the Kohen Gadol. You have Mashiach Havi Kohen Gadol v'loi Havi Kohen Gadol. You see that you need Mashiach even for the sons of a Kohen Gadol. Amar Mar ve'ein Moishchen Melech ben Melech. But for a king, the son, the prince who is coronated, doesn't need Mashiach. Minol. Number of Acha Bar Yaakov Siv L'man Yarach Yom HaMlachta. Torah says in the parsha we talk about appointing a melech. It says the Vilti Rum Levavi Me'achaloti Sor Min Ha Mitzvah Yeminu Smoil L'man Yarach Yom HaMamlachai Hu Bana B'Kerev Yisrael. It says Hu Bana B'Kerev Yisrael. The children also they become the kings. Yerusha Hilachem. So you see that it's Yerusha, and there's no pasuk that says Meshicha. We said an exception that when there's a challenger, then you do Meshicha. Loved called the boy Malka Moiris Malchusul Bnei, and not everyone who wants to can automatically make his son the Melech, but if there's a challenger, then you need a Meshicha. Amar Papa Amakra, who bana b'kerev Yisrael, Bizman Shalom b'Yisrael, Krine hu bana. When there's Shalom, then it's considered that he and his sons will automatically take over. Vafilu b'loi Meshicha. That would be even below Mashiach, but once there's machlekes, then you need a Mashiach. Tana, Avi Yehu ben Nimshi, Yehu the son of Nimshi, who became a melech. He only had a Mashiach because Yoram challenged for the Malucha. Taking from the Rishon who, what do we have to say that it was because someone challenged him? We said that a king generally doesn't need Mashiach. The exception is a son doesn't need. We said a son that's challenged needs it. So we're saying because he was challenged, therefore he needed it. But he needed it because he wasn't the son. Nimshi wasn't the melech. So he needs it just because he was the first of his line. So this whole din that we say that you need Mashiach is only applies to Malchus based David, not to Malchus Yisrael. And this this Yehu was a Malchus Yisrael. So therefore it didn't need Mashiach at all. Minalon, Amarava Amakra, Kum Mashchayu Kizeh says by David HaMelech that he said Kum Mashchayu because he's going to be the king. Zetor Mashiach ve'inachaton Mashiach. Only David and his lineage needs Mashiach, but not others. So he said, Amamar Av Yehu ben Nimshi loy Nimshach Elam Nei Malchugusa Shel Yarim. So he said Yehu really didn't need Mashiach because he was the first, because he was a Yisrael. But he said because there was a machlekes, they were Moishechim. How could you create if there's no chiyuv to be Moishech Melech Yisrael? It's Me'ila, you're not allowed to use it. It's Kachim, the Shemin HaMishcha. So how could you use it even though there's a machlekes? Could Amar Papa, like we can see on the next Amar, the Papa says Bafarsa Medachya, Hachanam Bafarsa Medachya. It wasn't the regular Shemin HaMishcha. It was with pure afarsamin. It was a different Mashiach. It wasn't the Torah mandated Mashiach. We said one of the people who got Mashiach, even though they were a son of a king, was Yoyachas because he had a brother, Yoyakim Sheyagadol Menu Sheishan, was 2 years older than him. In fact, is it true that Yoyakim was 2 years older than Yochaz? It says the sons of Yeshio, who was the father of Yochaz and Yoachim. It says the oldest was Yochanan, the second was Yoachim, the third was Tzidkiyahu, and the third was Shalim. Who Shalim, who Tzidkiyahu. The last two are really the same person. It was old Tzidkiyahu who eventually became the Melech. Who Yochanan, who Yayacha, who Yahayachas. This Yochanan that was mentioned in the pasuk is the Yayachas, is the Melech that we said was 2 years younger than Yayakim. But in this pasuk it says Habachar Yochanan, and we're saying that's Yayachas, who was the oldest. So really, the second one Yayakim was older. My Bechar Lamalchas. He was the Bechar that he became the Melech. So how could he make Yayachas the king instead of Yayakim? You don't make a younger in front of an older. That the Malchus was given to Yehoram because he was the Bechar. So you see that you give to the Bechar. So Yaakov was not as chashav. He didn't deserve. He wasn't deserving of being melucha. So you give the bechar only if he's capable. Amamar, who shalom hu tzidkiyo? We said shalom and tzidkiyo is the same thing. Hu yochanan hu yayachaz, and Yochanan is the same as yayachaz. V'chad chad kachashiv. But we counted out 4. It says, how could you say that the third one? It says the shlishi was tzidkiyo and the fourth was shalom, and they're both the same thing. Then what's the shlishi and the ravi? My shlishi, so Gemara shlishi lebanim, that tzidkiyo was the third of the children. My ravi lemalchus. He was the fourth. We used 2 different names for him because he was the fourth in the order of succession. That the mikara malach yayachas. First, Yayachas, his younger brother, was the king. Yayakim, and then Yayakim. L'psaif Yechanya, and then Yechanya. L'psaif Tzidkiyo. Tzidkiyo was after Yechanya. Yechanya was actually another grandson of the original king, and he was Melech before Tzidkiyo. So even though Tzidkiyo was or as he's called here, Shalom, was the third son, he became king fourth because he had a cousin who became king before. Tanaraban, who Shalom, who Tzidkiyo, Lama V'lam Likmei Shalom, Shayim Meshulish, Meshulam B'maisav, he was complete in he was doing only mitzvahs. Ikadami Shalom, Sheshalim Malchus, Sheshalom Malchus based David B'yamav. That was the end of Malchus based David. He was the final king of Malchus based David. Umashmoy Matanya. His real name is Matanya. Shmoy Shenema V'imlech Melech Bavel is Matanya Doidei Tachtav. Melech Bavel made Matanya, who was actually the uncle of Yechanya, who had been made Melech before him, and Yechanya had been sent into Bavel as a refugee, as in Galus. So the king of Bavel placed Matanya, who was Tzidkiyo, as king. We also have a Shmai Tzidkiyo. He called him Tzidkiyo. Amlei Ka Yatzdik Alech. The Rebbe Shalom should judge you. Al-Chasadin im Timroibi. Nebuchadnezzar said, if you're going to rebel against me as king, the Rebbe Shalom should judge you. That's why he's called Tzidkiyo. In the end, Tzidkiyo did rebel against Nebuchadnezzar. Asher Shviu Belikim, that he had been sworn by Nebuchadnezzar b'Shem Hashem. So we've come to the conclusion. We explained how it was that that the second brother, it was really the second brother became king first, and they explained the pasuk. It says that he was Moishechem, he was Moiches Yayachas, because he had a challenger for his kingdom, his older brother. But was there any Shemin HaMishcha at that point? At the time that the Aaron was Nignaz, that means that the father was, I forgot the name of the father, but the father of all these sons, he was the one who hid it away. Nigna Shemin HaMishcha. He hid away the Shemin HaMishcha, the Tzintzenes Hamon, and the little bit of Mon, Umakle Shal Aaron, and Aaron's staff, Shekdel Parchel, together with the almonds and the blossoms on it, after the Maisa of the Egel that was used to stop the Magefa, and the box in which the Plishtim sent the Dairon when they returned the Aaron to the Yidden. They placed the golden kalim into this box that was in the wagon next to the Aaron. We had this before, that this wagon went by itself; it returned by itself from the Plishtim. Umi Gonzai, who was the one who hit them? Yeshio Melch Yudah Gonzu. This is Yeshio, who was the father of these brothers. I'm going to take you and I'm going to bring you into Galus, you and your Malchus. Tziva v'gonzim. So he made an order that rather than being all these valuable these valuable objects, chfeitzim of mitzvah, rather than going to the galus and being lost, he hid them. He said to Levim that understood everything, Hakdoshim Lashem, that were Kadosh Hashem, Tnuas Aron HaKodesh, Bayis Hashem, Bonu Shlomo ben David, Melech Yisrael. He said, put it into the bias that Shlomo built, and it shouldn't come along with you into Galus on your shoulders. You should serve Hashem and your Amma, meaning put it into the Beis HaMikdash, into a hiding place in the Beis HaMikdash of Shlomo. So that was where we see that the Aron was hidden. Shame. We learn, the Rashi says, that it says, so we said that the Aron went into hiding, and it said, it says, so Sham tells you that the Tzitzena Saman also went into hiding. Ashya Mishmeres, that's and that's where we see the not just the Mon, but also the Shemna Mishcha, and Asya Dairis. That tells you that was from the Tzenes Hamon to the Shemna Mishcha. I'm sorry, the Dairis was Shemna Mishcha, and so I'm not sure. Asya Dairis. Did I skip? Asya Shem Asya Mishmeres Misheres Asya Dairis. All right. It says Mishmeres Hameres Tichsib Tzenes Hamon, just different order in Rashi. So that's what we see the makal of Aaron. So all these things were learned out from the Tzenes Hamon, which was learned out from the Aaron. Amar Pap. So in any case, we have a kasha, right? We see that the Shemana Mishka was hidden away by Yeshio, the father. So how were they Moshe, his sons? This is the original. It wasn't a real Mashiach. It was Mashiach with Afarsamin. It wasn't the Moshe Rabbeinu's Shemana Mishcha. Torah Ketzad Moshe Nesamlachim. How do they do Mashiach? Kamin Nezer. They do it like a crown around his head. As a Kayanim Kamin Ki. When they do the Kayanim, they do it like a key. My Kamin Ki. What does that mean? Rav Menashe Bagada Kamin Kafivani. Like the letter of Kaf Yavani, the letter Kaf in Yavin, which Rashi has a picture which looks like a ches to me. I've often seen it looks more like a nun, but over here Rashi has a picture of a ches. Maybe that pay tells you a little different. Yeah. So on the Mitzvah says Tzurazum Shubeshes Nechoin He Berambam Perakal Milchas Halachates Rosi Kazel, like an X. You look at Mishar Shas, it was like an X. That was the way they did Mashiach. First, they would pour oil on his head, and then they would do the Mashiach of anointing him, putting it between his eyes. First, they anointed him between his eyes, and then they poured on his head. Tanoi, and this is Machlekes Tanoi. Some say the Mashiach between the eyes is more adif, and some say that the pouring on the head is more important. My time at the Manda Amma Yitzika Adifa. Why would you say that pouring is better? They poured from the Shemin HaMishcha on Aaron's head, and then afterwards it says they did the Mashiach, the Katshek. So you see that first was Yitzika, and then Mashiach. Manda Mashiach Adifa. My time Akasav, my time Akasav Shechenat Moitza Eitzel Klei Sharis. By Klei Sharis, you only have Mashiach. You don't have Yitzika. You don't have pouring on top. You just have anointing. What about our pasuk that we just said that you first do by Yitzchak by the Kayin? It means to say that you do Yitzika because you'd already done Mashiach. Ton Rabban. Kishemen HaToiv Yored Al Zakin. Zakin Aaron. That the Shemen HaToiv, when Aaron was Nimshach, the oil descended onto his beard. I'm sorry. Oh, so there was like two drops of oil that were hanging at the end of Aaron's beard. When Aaron would talk, the drops would recede into the main part of his beard. It wasn't hanging. Moshe was worried about this. He said, maybe I put too much oil on and I was over on Me'ilah from using too much oil, and that's why there's extra shemen. That's what the pasuk said. That it was good. You did it right. There was no Me'ilah. Ketal chamer, because it says it's like the dew in chamer. Matal chamer aim by Me'ilah. Hashem and Amishcha shebezaken Aaron aim by Me'ilah. Hashem was reassuring Moshe that he didn't do anything wrong. Maybe that's only applies to Moshe, but not to me. The pasuk says that the two brothers was together. That just like we said that the pasuk says that Moshe was a mol, you also were not mol. Turn around, you only do mashicha. You anoint kings next to a spring, in order that their malchus should stay. That's why, I guess, why there's a minig to propose by water, to have this, that just like we say the malchus should continue. We also want the zivug to continue. Said to I think this is to David, go take your avodim and go down to Gicha, and that's what we're going to be coronate you. Someone who wants to know if he's going to make it through the year. Nitli shraga ba'asar yemei yumi debein Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. He should go between the Aseres Yemei Tshuva that's coming up. He should take a torch, but baisa de loinoshav zik, in a house that doesn't have any draft. Imashach nahira neid de masik shasya. If the torch stays lit, if it doesn't go out, he knows he's going to make it through the year. Uman de boy lemavad beiska, someone who wants to enter into a business. Boy lemedi mitzach iloi mitzach, he wants to know if it's going to be successful. Lirbi tarnagoyla, he should grow, he should breed a rooster. Ishamim v'shafar matzlach, and if the rooster is successful, that means his business will be successful. Hayman de boy lemepik leurcha, someone who wants to go on a trip. Uboy lemedi chazer v'asi lebesi iloi, he wants to know if he's going to return safely or not. Nekim ebesa de chavra, he should go into a dark house. Ichazi babua de babua, if he sees a shadow of his shadow, later the had of asi lebesa, he'll know that he's going to return safely to his house. V'lav milsi, but the Gemara says once it's best not to do this. Dilma chol shadaita o misru mazle, because maybe he'll get like it won't come out, the siman won't come out good, which is not, the simanim are not conclusive. And that will cause him to be depressed, and then these for sure things are not good. Depression is worse than everything.
Is that going back on just the last thing or on all of them?
I think it goes on all of them, but that's just my speculation. I'm very sympathetic to this whole line of reasoning. Every year when we do the apple and honey, we're going to see soon the simanim of Rosh Hashanah. Every year when I do the apple and honey or all the simanim, I tell my kids, you should just know the simanim have no power. The only power is if it's ma'ir you to daven better and to do tshuva. But outside of it, it's not going to accomplish. You're not going to get you any extra schar. You're going to get the schar for the mitzvahs you do, and you're going to get einshim for the averis you do, and the siman is not going to change it.
And Lizzie, that this is the weight on the shoulders I was referring to last night, being a Chaim Blunt. That's it. You heard it here first.
I want you to know I have a son-in-law, my first son-in-law, Laskin. The first Rosh Hashanah he came to us, and I gave my speech. His father gives the same speech in Lakewood. So
is he a Chaim Blinner?
No, he's a Litvak.
Zavzach. Okay.
There are other Litvaks besides Chaim Berlin.
And the son-in-law has not come back to Rosh Hashanah ever since. Is the
Oh, he gives the same speech himself. He's exactly the same. Amar Abaya. Now that we're like acknowledging that there's something to Simonim, everyone should make sure on Rosh Hashanah to eat kara, which is like a type of squash, veruvia, which is some other type of vegetable. Karsi, which is I think leek. Basilka, I think is beets with tamri and dates. Amlahu, these are all I think very fertile vegetables, so it's a good simon to eat them. Amlu Meshashi Lebrei. When you want to go learn by your Rebbe, Gersu Masnisa v'alu l'kamei revaychu. First learn Mishnayos and then go to learn to your Rebbe. In order that you should be able, I think it just means that you should be able to learn well. Yeah, it's important to know the Mishnayos before you go here the shir, the Rebaruch Beres. V'chiyas visu kamei, when you are sitting in front of your Rebbe, chazu l'pumei. Watch his mouth, watch his face. Your eyes should see your Rebbe, so you should watch him carefully, so you should hear every word he says. And when you're learning, you should learn next to a river. Just like the water remains, it's constant, so too your learning should be constant. The tivu al kilkel de mosa machshia lo tivu apane de mbazisa. Better to stay by the garbage heap in mosa machshia with his more learning, and don't go to the palaces in Pumbedisa with his less learning. Tov goldena sarya. Better to have a goldena as a type of small fish that's rotten. The mosa machshia from mosa machshia lemechel mikuscha de rami kifi, rather than the kuscha, which is a kind of dip of Rami. Kifi Rashi has two pshatim. Either it's better to that these small fish are better than the dip, even though it's about to go bad, than the kutach, because it's not good for your stomach. Or else it means to say that it's better to go with the Rashi's second pshat. It's better to someone who's learning, better to have less olam haza. Should take better the cheap fish rather than the expensive kusach. Rama Karni Belikoi, Rama Karni Veli Rama Pachi. Going back to the Mashiach of Malachim, the Torah says that I'm going to raise the horn of Rama Karni Veli Rama Pachi. It says the Karen and not the Pacha. David and Shlomo be Karen Nimshcha Machusin. David and Shlomo, that the Shemen HaMishcha was poured on them from a horn, so their melech stayed. Shol v'yehu shenimshcha b'pach, they came from a pach, lo nimshcha malchusan. But Karen, Haramas Karen is a sign of Mashiach, of staying. Hamashuk b'Shemen HaMishcha. We said in the Mishnah that the Parkai and Mashiach is brought by someone who's Mashiach b'Kemen HaMishcha. Tanur about Mashiach Yachol Melech. How do we know that the parsha of Par Kohen Mashiach is talking about the Kohen Gadol? All it says in the pasuk is, I don't know where the pasuk is. Ema Kohen HaMashiach Yachtel Oshmasam. How do we Kohen HaMashiach means a Kohen Gadol? Tamaloi Kohen. The Gemara says it says Kohen. Kohen means it doesn't mean a melech. It means the Kohen Gadol. Kohen Yachol Meruba Begadim. How do I know it means Dafka b'Shemen HaMishcha? Maybe it's if he's just in the Meruba Begadim. Tamaloi Mashiach. It says Mashiach. Mashiach Yachol Mashiach Melchama. Maybe it means there's a type of melech, Kohen Gadol, who is anointed just for the purpose of fighting, going out in a war, and he was a lower level than the regular Mashiach, the regular Kohen Gadol. Tamalayim v'Kohen HaMashiach. She'ein Mashiach al Gabav has to be the Kohen Gadol. The only one who brings the parallel Bakar Kohen Gadol is the one that has no one above him. My mashma. How do you see that? Kedama Rava. Hayerach Hamimanu Shebeyerach. When it says Hayerach, it says the thigh, it means the stronger thigh. Hachanami HaMashiach Hamiyum Shebemeshuchim. When it says HaMashiach, it means the strongest of the Meshuchim, of those Gemashichos. It means the regular Kohen Gadol and not the Meshuch Mucham. Amar Mar Mashiach Yacham Melech. How could you say? We suggested that maybe when we say the Mashiach, it's referring to the king. Melech Paru Demaisi, Saru Demaisi. We already said what the Melech brings. He doesn't bring the Melech brings the Sar. He doesn't bring a par and a Sar. It's Chsakda Chamina. Asigas Maisi Yavi Sar, Alhamdava Yavi Par. Maybe it was I might think that he just brings the sire for regular chatas kavua, but when it's with a helam davar, then he would bring the both the sire and the par. We said there's nothing that's different between the meshuach b'shemen hamishcha and except for the par kayin gadol. And we said there's nothing between a current Kohen Gadol and a Kohen Gadol who was a temporary Kohen Gadol and no longer there, except for the par the par that's brought on Yom Kippur and the chavitin that's brought every day. So tomorrow, my sister is like Reb Meir. Our mission is not like Reb Meir. The Reb Meir, Tanya, Meruba God, maybe parabal kol mitzvahs. The Reb Meir says that you do bring someone who's a Meruba Begada, who didn't have the Shemin HaMishcha, also has the din of the Par Koyin Gadol. The Chum didn't agree. My time of the Remeir. Where did Remeir get this from? The Tanya. Mashiach ainly ela Mashiach b'Shemin HaMishcha, Meruba Begadim. And how do you know the Mashiach with Meruba Begadim also has the din of bringing the Par Koyin Mashiach? Tamalayim HaKoyin HaMashiach. He learns exactly the opposite. So we said Par Koyin HaMashiach means only one of the Meshuchim. The Miyumin Shem Meshuchim. Remeir dashed exactly the opposite. HaKoyin HaMashiach, whoever had Mashiach, whether it was Meshuach Muchama, or I'm sorry, whether it was Meruba Begadim, or if it was Meshucha. Mayu Kimta. So what are you saying? You're saying our Mishnah is Kirabanon, Aim a Sefer. Our Mishnah, the Sefer of a Mishnah is not like the Rabbanon, it's like Remeir. There's no difference in a kohen who's currently serving to a former kohen gadol. The only difference is the power of Yom Kippur and the Asir Sefer, the Chavitin. That is like Rameh, the Tanya. If a kohen gadol got a psul, and therefore, and it passed. And then you point to someone in his place. When the psul goes away, the first one goes back to being kohen gadol. Vasheni komitz kuna olav. Divrei Reb Meir. Reb Meir says all the mitzvah of kuna are on him. If Yossi says he can't be kohen gadol at all. Amar Rav Yossi, Ma'aseh Yossi ben Ila mitzipayr she'iroi psul b'kohen gadol. There was such a Maisa that someone was a Kohen Gadol, and then the original Kohen returned, and they said that the temporary Kohen is not allowed to be a Kohen Gadol. Why not? Kohen Gadol, Mishum Eva, Kohen Hedjid, Mishum Malam Kodesh ve'Emeridin. He can't be he can't be the Kohen Gadol, he can't still work as a Kohen Gadol, because that will cause jealousy between the returned Kohen Gadol and him. And he can't become a Kohen Hedjid because that's demeaning someone who wants a Kohen Gadol to be a Kohen Hedjid. So he doesn't act as a Kohen at all. So what? Reisha Rabban of a Sefer Reb Meir. He's saying in this, so we see that the Chaylik on Reb Meir over here holds he's not a Kohen Gadol at all. Reb Meir was the Mandam who says he is a Kohen Gadol. So that's like our Mishnah. But the Reisha we said can't be like Reb Meir, Lagabi the Din, of bringing the par Kohen Gadol. He said it only goes to the par to the Mashuach and not to the Meruba Begadim. Rameh disagree with that. Amar Chizda in Reish Rabban of a Sefer Rameh. We have to say that the first one is the Rabban and the Sefer Rameh. The Yosef Amar Rebbe. He says the difference. He says that it's all Rebbe our Mishnah. And also Tanoi. Rebbe was saying different shitas. It wasn't. It's not saying he's not. He was bringing the Machlokes Tanoim. Rava Amar Rav Shimon. Rava says this is our Mishnah is Rav Shimon. That he agrees with Rameh on one din and he disagrees with him on the other. The Tanya. Dvarim shebein Kohen Gadol Kohen Hedjid. What are the differences between a Kohen Gadol and a Kohen Hedjid? Eluhen. Parabal kolamet. So first of all, the Kohen Gadol brings the par Kohen Gadol. Upar Yom Kippurim. The Kohen Gadol also brings the par Yom Kippur. Vasir Seif and the Chavitin every day. V'lei Pereh v'lei Feirim. When he has a mace, the Kohen Gadol does not grow his hair and he doesn't rip his clothing, aval hu pairim milamata, but he rips it from underneath. The Gemara later on, actually the next Mishnah is going to, the Gemara after the next Mishnah is going to explain what it means to yifarim lamata. The hedjit milmaila, but the hedjit does a regular free, he rips his clothing on top. The a metamel kroivim, Kohen Gadol is not metamel to kroivim, which a Kohen hedjit is. Umuzar al psula, he has to stay away from a psula. But also balman is also balman machzis or itzeach, and the Kohen Gadol is machzis or itzeach. A makriv einin, he can be makriv as an einin. Kohen Gadol ve'ein oichel. However, Kohen Gadol, even though he's makriv karbanis when he's an einin, he doesn't eat. Ve'ein a chelik, he also doesn't get a chelik from the matanis, from the karbanis when he's an einin. Makriv chelik beroish. The Kohen Gadol also has the milo of the Kohen hedjit, that he gets the first choice of what to be makriv. And he gets from the basar, he gets the first chelik. Or mishamish b'shmoyne kelim, he uses 8 begadim as opposed to a Kohen hedjit who has 4. He's the only one who could do the avodah of Yom Kippur. Potter al tumas mikdash ukdashav, and also he doesn't have the din of carbon oil of yared for tumas mikdash ukdashav, like we said before. This was the sheet of Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon said that we had the machlekes, Rabbi Kiva, Rav Shimon, a little different sheetas on there. Rabbi Yisrael Glili. Rav Shimon was the madam who said that he's not mechuyev on tumas mikdash ukdashav since he's excluded. He has a separate par on Yom Kippur. He also has a separate din. He doesn't have too much mitzvah kedusha. V'kulam noyegim b'meruba begadim. All of these things that we said about the Kohen Gadol that was Meshuach also apply to a Kohen Gadol that's meruba begadim. Chutz mipara maybe al kol mitzvahs except for the par Kohen Mashiach. V'kulam noyegim b'Mashiach she'avar chutz. All of them apply to a Kohen Gadol who was a temporary Kohen Gadol. All of them apply. The Parayim Kippur and Sir Seifa doesn't apply. So you see, this is the same as what our Brisa had said. That was our mission. And none of these things apply to a Meshuach Mulchama. We have basically 4 different types of Kehanim Gedalim, right? You have a Meshuach, you have a Meruba Begadim, you have a Kohen Gadol She'avar, and finally, you have a Meshuach Mulchama, which is the least like a regular Kohen Gadol. So nothing. The Meshuach Mulchama has none of these. Chutz mehei dvarim hamurim beparsha, except for the 5 things that are midaraisa, like pareya, like pairim, that he doesn't rip his clothing, and he doesn't grow his hair and doesn't rip his clothing. Ve'eina metamel krivim, doesn't come tamei to his krivim. Umuzar al psula v'asa balman. Umachzer saretzeach. So I guess we're putting Paireh Upairim as one thing. Or maybe Muzar Almana Al Psulava, because we have really 6. Divir Rabbi Yehuda. Chum remain in Machzer. The Chum say he doesn't bring back, so that's how it gets to 5, I guess. V'haini Maider Shimon. How do we know that this whole Brisa is Shimon? Amar Papa, Man Shamli Dama Patal Altomas Bekdushash Rav Shimon. Like we said before, this whole Brisa is Rav Shimon. There's the last machlekes between Yehuda and the Rabbanan on the topic of Machzir, but the entire Brisa is going like Rav Shimon. So he said, Chutz mehei dvarim hamurim beparsha. We said the Kohen that's Meshuach Mulchama is nothing applies to him of a Kohen Gadol except for the 5 things that are Dairaisa. We know immediately, where does this come from? Tan Rabban, Kohen Gadol meyachav zeh Kohen Gadol asher yutzak al roish shemen hamishcha. Zeh Kohen Gadol asher yutzak al roish shemen hamishcha zeh Meshuach Mulchama. A Kohen Gadol is talking about the Kohen Gadol, and Shiyutzak al roish shemen hamishcha is the Meshuach Mulchama. That's one who didn't have Mashiach. All these things apply. Maybe all of them have the din to be makavar. So it's only on the Mashiach and none of the others. So we only mentioned 3 things that it says in the pasuk. Maybe since we already said that the Meshuach Mulchama is different, maybe he's also allowed to marry. He doesn't have to marry a psula. It says vahu, so it says that he also is included. Ketanoi, buisha bepsula yikach. It says vahu b'isha likula. So we said that's coming to include the Meshuach Mulchama. Akash echol hakasav riba divrei Rabbi Yishmael. So Rabbi Shmuel says, like we just said, that that we're also including the Meshuach Milchama in the requirement to marry a psula. The who is telling you a totally different thing. It's not coming to be marba a Meshuach Milchama. Rather, it's coming to tell you a regular Kohen Gadol that lost his position because of he was a keri, so he still has a din. I think only he still has a din that he has to marry psula. Machmas muma minai. Maybe someone who had a mum and he was permanently excluded from being Kohen Gadol, he could marry even someone who's not a psula. So that's who it's coming to include, a regular Meshuach b'shemen mishcha, nothing to do with Meshuach Milchama. Ba'aminei Rav Meir Rav Nachum, Mashiach shenitztera ma'u ba'almana. A Mashiach that got saras. What's his din to marry an almana? Mitchadachi and mifter potter. That was he daicha his din as a Kohen Gadol and therefore he can marry an almana, or is he just a ptur? Lehavi biyadi. He didn't have the answer. Zimrin havi yasser Papa will come b'boyalei. He's asking Shram, like Huna Breder of Nachum Papa Tina. Ainli Elisha Ava Machmas Kiri Ava Machmas Mumin. I Tamale Vahu. He said from Vahu, that tells you even someone who has a permanent loss of the ability to be a Kohen Gadol, he also is still not allowed to marry Almano. Kam Nashka Beresha V'Yav Lebarte. He gave him a kiss on his head, and he gave her his daughter's hand in marriage. Well, let's do one more mission. Kohen Gadol Parim Lamata V'Hedjib Milmaila. Kohen Gadol, with the Kohen Gadol, like we said, he tears his clothing from the bottom, but a hedge does it from on top. Kohen Gadol makav einin. Kohen Gadol can bring a carbon when he's einin v'lo but he can't eat. But hedge it like makav v'lo he can't be makav either. Amar Rav lamata mamish lamayla mamish. Rav says lamata means underneath the means at the bottom of his clothing, and lamayla means on the top, meaning by the neck. Lamata means by the bottom hem, and lamayla means by the top hem. Lamata mekami shafa. Well, lamata means just underneath the hole of the neck. He makes like a little hole underneath it, and he makes a cut there. Lamayla mekami shafa, and lamayla means by the actual neck hole. The zev tzaver, both of them are by the neck. Meisi akola mesim kulon rotza mavdel kami shafa shaloi rotza ene mavdel kami shafa shaloi. On any mace, a person can do the kriya whether by the neck or not. I love valim and mavdil. But for a person's father or mother, they have to do by the neckline. Kiva de ba'alma havi kara, karikam begadav lo yifram. The pasuk says, now, so we see that even underneath the neckline is considered, when he makes a hole underneath the neck and he makes a hole there, that we're considering that also a kriya. How could it be that Shmuel says that the Kohen Gadol can make a kriya there, that he doesn't have to do it at the bottom? Karakam Gadol lo yifram. What about what the Torah says that he can't do the kriya? So Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda Tzrielei the Amar Kol Karash Eine Mavdil Shafash Lo Eine Ele Karash Tiflas. He holds fakert. He holds that there's no such thing. The only kriya is by the neckline. Anything else is not a kriya. Umi Yisla Yehuda kriya b'Kohen Gadol. There's Rabbi Yehuda. He's saying Rabbi Shmuel is going like Rabbi Yehuda. Yehuda doesn't hold of a kriya by a Kohen Gadol. Vatanya ilu nema roish lo yifro beged lo yifro ma'isi ayme beroish beged shel soita. I would think it's talking about the Torah says we uncover the hair and we rip the clothing, like when we open up her clothing, even if it rips, it rips. Maybe that's saying that the Kohen Gadol has to do that. Talmud Laimeh es roisha lo yifra begadol lo yifrim she'ena befrio prima kolikar. That he doesn't do it at all. He doesn't do from the saita. It's nothing is done by the Kohen Gadol. That the Kohen Gadol is not shaykh to prima at all. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So you see, Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold that there's any kriya at all, whether on top or on bottom. But the Rabbi Shmuel disagrees. He says that he could do it milamata. So how could we say Shmuel's going to Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda holds there's no ripping of clothing for a Kohen Gadol. So Shmuel Shabbat Rabbi Yehuda b'chada poligol b'chada. He agrees with Rabbi Yehuda that anything beneath the neckline is not considered a full ripping, but he holds taka that a Kohen Gadol is not mechuyev to do any priya at all. He doesn't agree with Rabbi Yehuda on that. He says he should do the secondary priya. Okay, we'll stop over here and